Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Daybreak, the bereaved families of the victims of April's ferry sinking have rejected a deal reached by rival parties to pass a bill on uncovering the truth about the disaster. President Park Geun-hye says she hopes North Korea will accept her proposal to expand cooperative projects to improve FOSTI ties and eventually lay the groundwork for unification. Plus, 3 Ebola-infected doctors in Liberia who have been taking an experimental drug are said to be showing remarkable signs of improvement. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, August 20th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, the families of the victims of April's deadly Sewol-ho ferry disaster have rebuffed a deal reached by Korea's 2 main political parties to pass a bill aimed at uncovering the truth about that sinking. The development is just the latest twist in the government's efforts to start the probe and begin moves to address a wide range of urgent national issues. Our Myung-kil has the details on the day's events.
The ruling Saenuri party conceded on Tuesday to giving the committee charged with handling the Sewol-ho ferry investigation special prosecutorial powers as demanded by the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy.
4 spots on the panel will be allocated to lawmakers. 2 will be reserved for main opposition party and 2 for the ruling party. We'll appoint our share of the 2, only after seeking approval from the opposition and families of the ferry victims.
Both parties' floor leaders also agreed to start discussing the matter of compensation for the victims and surviving families and passage for a series of urgent bills in the upcoming plenary session next month.
93 urgent bills and 43 others that are pending will be pushed to the next plenary session. But only bills that are approved by chief policymakers from both parties will be passed.
The floor leaders of the rival parties promised to continue negotiations on the days for the Sewol-ho ferry hearings and who will be called in as witnesses. However, the family members of the Sewol-ho ferry victims stand opposed to today's deal, demanding all 4 panel members be recommended by the main opposition party. Myung-kil, Arirang News.
Now, a senior official from Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says settling the sex slavery issue is key to cooling tensions between Korea and Japan. Speaking to reporters at the ASEAN Regional Forum in Myanmar, the senior official expressed the urgency in resolving the highly emotive issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women before and during World War II. This in upcoming high-level talks between the 2 countries. The Korean official also said that Tokyo is coming under pressure from the UN, the US and the European Union to atone for its historical wrongdoing. However, as per rounds of talks in the past between the 2 countries that have been held over the past couple of months, the Korean official said it's too early to say whether any progress will be made this time around. On the day of Pope Francis's arrival in Seoul last Thursday in fact, North Korea test-fired 5 short-range rockets into the East Sea. Now, new analysis suggests that they were in fact a new type of tactical missile that could potentially reach deep into South Korean territory. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
North Korea is believed to have developed a new form of tactical missile that could pose a new threat on the Korean peninsula. According to joint analysis by South Korea and the United States, the North test-fired 5 of the new rockets last Thursday into the East Sea. A source within South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the new model appears to be different from the North's existing KN-02 missiles or those fired from the 300mm rocket launcher, but maintains their advantages with a range of 200 kilometers and a warhead weight of 500 kilograms. The source said the new rocket, likely to be called the KN-10, is believed to use solid fuel and can be launched from a movable launcher. If fired from the military demarcation line separating the north and south, it could reach the central parts of South Korea.
It can load many more explosives. It is a threat because it does not require advanced preparation to launch and can be fired at any time.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is also believed to have purchased a new personal plane. Made in Ukraine, the Antonov 148 can seat up to 80 people, and unlike his previous plane, which was fitted with tables, this one looks more like a regular passenger jet. The plane, worth some $30 million, shows Kim Jong-un's penchant for not just spending, but for traveling by air, unlike his father, who was notoriously afraid of flying. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, President Park Geun-hye says she's confident North Korea will respond positively to the joint projects she proposed to Pyongyang last week during her Liberation Day speech. In a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, the president reiterated the two Koreas should together pursue small, non-political projects in a positive step towards unification. She suggested the two sides look into jointly managing rivers and forests that extend through both Koreas and launch a cultural project next year. Pyongyang, likely in protest against joint Seoul-Washington military drills, hasn't responded to either the president's proposal or Seoul's offer for high-level talks. Now, with the 2014 Asian Games kicking off in the South Korean port city of Incheon in less than 1 month's time, a delegation from North Korea's Olympic Committee arrived in South Korea late Tuesday for some pre-Games functions. The group is made up of 8 North Korean officials. You can see them coming through the doors there, including Sewol-ho, who is the president of the Korean University of Physical Education in Pyongyang. Arriving on a flight from Beijing, the officials were all smiles, but refused to do any interviews with the reporters there. During his stay, Yang will give a keynote speech and a presentation at a pre-Games event on this Wednesday. The delegation will also tour the main stadium and the athletes' village before leaving South Korea. On Friday, around 150 North Korean athletes will take part in the Incheon Asian Games, which run through September 19th to October 4th. Pope Francis is now safely back in the Vatican after wrapping up what was a truly historic 5-day visit to Korea earlier this week. And it would be safe to say that he left a huge impression that will not soon be forgotten. Our Connie Kim takes a look at how the Korean public and the media here reacted to the papal visit.
The first papal visit to Korea in 25 years is sure to remain in the hearts of Koreans for quite some time. Throughout his 5-day trip, Pope Francis's down-to-earth personality and heartfelt gestures were a fixture on the front pages. Most of them point out to his humility and care and say Korea has fallen deeply in love with the Pope. One headline reads, "The Pope who likes children stops 10 times to bless them," and another says, "Pope stops to console the families of the victims. The bereaved hope for changes in politics." And in reference to his final Mass on Monday, when Pope Francis took the time to speak with the victims of sexual slavery during wartime, this headline reads, "7 former sex slaves sit in front, and Pope takes care of the weak until the end." The comments on Twitter echoed these sentiments. Korean users cheered the Argentinian Pope for listening to those who have largely gone silent in society. This tweet here reads, "Korean citizens appreciate the Pope's humble nature, which is something Korean citizens want from their own leaders." Another tweet says, "The Pope is a leader who truly unifies." And this one says that the pontiff is a leader the people can lean on. The Twitter user goes on to say that he wants the so-called Pope Francis syndrome to linger, and on the streets, people largely agreed.
It was impressive to see the Pope holding hands with the families of the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster.
I visit Gotongnim village often. It was very touching that he met with the disabled there.
I was touched to see the Pope riding in such a compact car at a time when so many people are materialistic.
The pontiff's inaugural trip to Korea lasted just 5 days, but his outreach to those who are suffering and to those that can help them
left a definite impression. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
The government has revised the country's regulatory system for the first time in 16 years. Reporting to the President on Tuesday, the Office for Government Policy Coordination put forth a bill revision which includes eliminating or easing an existing regulation when adding or strengthening a regulation. For some regulations, the revision uses a system of initially allowing a policy, then applying a regulation as an exception. President Park has been pushing to cut red tape as part of efforts to stimulate the local economy. The Cabinet approved the bill and it will be submitted to Parliament later this week. Global ratings agency Fitch has retained its AA- credit rating for South Korea, maintaining its outlook at stable. The Finance Ministry here in Seoul said on Tuesday that Fitch had cited moderate government debt and sustained budget surpluses behind its decision. The agency evaluated Korea's growth as still being resilient, although the domestic economy has been dented by April's ferry disaster. Rising household debt and the, quote, North Korean risk factor, however, were cited as weak spots that could dampen the country's sovereign credit profile. Now, Seoul has been listed as the 16th most influential city in the world. US economics magazine Forbes also pegged the South Korean capital as one of the rising stars, hinting that it could make it into the top 10 in the near future. Forbes took into account various factors such as foreign investment, concentration of corporate businesses and ease of air travel. London was deemed the world's most influential city this year. New York City came in a close second, followed by Paris and Singapore. Shifting gears now to the local arts and culture scene. And the 20th century was, of course, a hugely influential time for art. Our Myung-kil takes a look at one exhibition taking place right now in Seoul, where you can enjoy a wide array of artworks that shed light on this period.
The 20th century gave birth to modern art, a movement that contains some of the biggest and most influential movements in the history of art. From the beautiful and delicate paintings of Pierre-Auguste Renoir to the edgy and somewhat frightening works of Damien Hirst. A walk through pieces from the 20th century reveals the twists and turns that have led to today's world of art.
Renoir to Damien Hirst is a blockbuster exhibition that features 104 different original works from 53 leading artists of the 20th century.
Early art of the 20th century came on the tail end of the Impressionist, Realist, and Neoclassical movements. Works that sometimes capture soft edges, but also the reality of life. The Post-Impressionist movement then appeared, along with a string of other movements, revealing artists submerged in a need for something different. Fast forward in time, and the art world is now enveloped in sharp colors and eye-catching images. And it's not just with paintings. Artist Magritte questions reality, and Dali questions perception with his unique sculptures. But it doesn't stop there. Pop art entered the playing field and became a game changer. Sharp contrasting images, lines and edges became more frequent. Bright colors and odd combinations lined the walls of art. And these pioneering artists opened the doors to new ideas, expanding the boundaries, making it possible for many others to follow suit.
Damien Hirst is an artist who truly represents contemporary art. He was the first to use his spin art paintings, which led to the development of other new ideas and contemporary artworks.
Regardless of the movement and styles, the 20th century contained a range of different artists with different visions. And with just one stroll through a gallery, you can walk through 100 years of history. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Wednesday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. We begin in Liberia this morning, where its information minister says all 17 suspected Ebola patients who had fled their quarantine center when it came under fire this past weekend have been accounted for. Minister Lois Brown said they were transferred to another Ebola clinic Tuesday while where they will be tested for the virus. He also said the 3 infected African doctors who had been administered the last known doses of the experimental drug ZMapp were showing remarkable signs of improvement. The information minister also said a task force would be set up to go door to door to educate residents of the West Point neighborhood, the country's largest slum, about the risks of Ebola. The latest WHO update shows that Liberia once again registered the most number of new Ebola deaths, this time over a 3-day period in the latter half of last week, with 53 new casualties. The overall Ebola death toll observed in the 4 West African nations of Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria has topped the 1,200 mark. Another night of demonstrations in the U.S. town of Ferguson in Missouri State turned violent, ending with the arrests of 31 people. In an early morning press conference, local time Captain Ron Johnson of the Missouri State Highway Patrol said a tiny minority of lawbreakers hailing from as far away as New York and California had caused mayhem, setting 2 fires, throwing Molotov cocktails, and firing at police. He said police, who were heavily armed in riot gear, responded with tear gas and stun grenades, but fired no bullets. Community members had been protesting for a 10th night in the St. Louis suburb, the death of an unarmed 18-year-old who was gunned down by police more than a week ago. U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder is set to arrive in Ferguson on Wednesday to lead the federal government's probe on this shooting. A 24-hour ceasefire extension on the Gaza Strip expired at the top of the hour, with still no sight of its revival. Hours earlier, Israeli military had said it responded to fresh rocket fire from Gaza with airstrikes. Israeli officials said the first 3 rockets landed in open fields near Beersheba, while 2 others were later intercepted over the Israeli city of Netivot. Spokesman to the Israeli Prime Minister Mark Regev called the rocket attack a grave and direct violation of the ceasefire as Israeli negotiators pulled out of Egypt, who refused to negotiate while under fire. Hamas has denied sending rockets into Israel. Meanwhile, renewed Israeli airstrikes are said to have killed at least 1 child, while prompting thousands of Gazans to flee to UN shelters, according to eyewitnesses. Hospital officials in Gaza told the AP that 7 children had been wounded. A major aid operation is set to be launched in Iraq as skirmishes broke out between Iraqi forces and Islamic State militants in the outskirts of Tikrit on Tuesday. In one of its largest pushes, the United Nations aid agency said it will send tents and other goods by air, road, and sea to the Kurdish city of Erbil this week. UNHCR estimates more than 500,000 people have been displaced by the fighting in northern Iraq. The help will first be sent by air on Wednesday from Jordan, followed by aid by road from Turkey, and finally by sea from Dubai and Iran.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA, where South Korea's Park In-bi is closing in on Stacey Lewis for the top ranking in women's golf. The five-time tour major winner, who recently won the 2014 Wegmans LPGA Classic, moved up a spot in the latest world rankings and has surpassed Lydia Ko for the #2 ranking. Now, Park, who began the season as the top-ranked female golfer in the world, just trails Stacey Lewis and is gaining ground in the race to the CME Globe as well. And now moving over to the men's and women's Korean national football team set to compete in the upcoming Incheon Asian Games. Now on Tuesday, the top seeds were announced and both teams were given the top seeds for the tournament. Now as for the men's team, they were given the top seed along with Japan, the UAE, Iran, North Korea, Uzbekistan, Oman, and Thailand, while the women's team were seeded along with Japan and North Korea. The men's tournament will consist of 30 nations, while the women's tournament will feature just 11. Meanwhile, the group stage drawing will take place on Thursday in Incheon. And speaking of the Incheon Asian Games, the entry for the upcoming games in September have been finalized, and we're expecting a pretty big crowd this year. The organizing committee announced on Tuesday that 45 nations, including North Korea, will be competing in the Asian Games this year, with a total of 9,757 athletes set to take part in Incheon. Of course, of the 45 nations, China will have the most number of athletes with 899, while South Korea will have 831 athletes. Meanwhile, North Korea will take part in 14 events with 150 athletes in September. And now moving over to some Tuesday night KBO action, as the Samsung Lions and the Kia Tigers were rained out last night, but the Hanwha Eagles beat the Lotte Giants 10-7, with the Tucson Bears rallying back to beat the SK Wyverns 12-6. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the two rivals square off as the LG Twins take on the Nexen Heroes. And now going into the game here, bottom of the first, Park Byung-ho, holy cow, a two-run shot, number 40 on the season, as he becomes the 6th Korean slugger to hit 40 in a single season. Meanwhile, second inning, more from Nexen this time. Park Dong-won with an RBI single to left makes it 3-0 before Lee Tae-keun grounds one to short, but an E6 brings home Moon Woo-ram, and it's now 4-0. But here come the LG Twins in the third. Chung Sung-hoon deep to left, a two-run shot, and it's 4-2. Not done yet. Park Young-taek this time, and there it goes. Gone, another two-run shot, and we're tied 4-4. Fast forward to the 6th inning, game tie 5-5. Oh Ji-hwan RBI single to center, and the LG Twins take the lead 6-5 before adding an insurance run in the 9th inning as they come back to win this one 7-5. And now finishing things off in Formula One racing, if you haven't heard of Max Verstappen just yet, well, you will soon, as he's set to become the youngest Formula One driver next season. Now, 16-year-old Max Verstappen, who will turn 17 in September, is set to become the youngest F1 driver when he joins the top-tier racing competition next season. The former karting world champion will be part of Red Bull Racing and, interestingly enough, still needs to pass his driving test. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, we've received the rain for 4 consecutive days now, pouring heavy downpours to some of the areas, causing damages. Well, unfortunately, it seems like we are going to receive more rain today. Up to 200 millimeters of more rain is in store till tomorrow, especially to regions down south. Though we should get a brief break from the rain this morning, but it will begin to fall again from this afternoon in the southern coast areas, then expand to the other southern regions, then will spread to upper provinces late at night. And the cloud cover will continue through today, and daytime highs should be a bit higher than yesterday, so let's take a closer look. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 21, then the high in the capital in Gwangju will rise to 27, while Daegu and Busan will peak at 26 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island will get up to 26, Daejeon will top out at 27, while Mount Kumgang reaches at 18. It's going to be a rainy one today, so please stay dry. And that's all for Korea. And here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Thanks very much for watching the programme. We'll be back throughout the day with many more news updates, and I'll be back at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.